So thank you so much for joining us tonight in our first artist talk in this year with Daisuke Nakano, our painter, and Frank Feltens, today's special guest. Thank you for your time, and we are very excited to share this time now connecting from New York and Washington and Kyoto and from everywhere. And I would like to express my gratitude, especially in this difficult time. I couldn't manage to stay in Japan for almost 10 weeks this winter. And I saw over 30 artists and visited 17 towns in Japan. And I could see my family and friends and artists. Each studio visit makes me even energized, and we are now more than committed to keep you excited, and then would like to give you continuously surprises through our artists' artworks and our activities. So thank you so much for your support during this time, and we are very, very looking forward to better things in this spring. So before we would like to welcome our guest tonight, I want to go through a quick guideline for this meeting. So please set your view to gallery view to see the participants, and mute your microphone during the event, and turn your camera off. And if there are any questions or comments, please feel to use and type in the comment section. We can pick from that. And this event will be until 8:30 in Eastern Time, which is in Tokyo and Kyoto in 9:30 a.m. Before work, you can make it. And feel free to turn your microphone on and speak during our last question and answer session. Thank you. So let's start this conversation. We would like to introduce the artist, painter, and our dear friend, Daisuke Nakano. And currently we at Ippodo Gallery, New York, are opening the new show with his beautiful works. The title of the show is Painting Radiance, Light and Nature in the Art of Daisuke Nakano, starting from tomorrow. He was born in 1974 and raised in Kyoto. From an early age, Nakano has explored the history and styles of Nihonga, a traditional Japanese painting. Nihonga originated with the Japanese schools of painting that flourished prior to and during Japan's Edo period, 1615 through 1868. During that time, renowned institutions such as the Kano, Tosa, and Rinpa schools, among others, produced paintings and styles that would become canonized as representing a distinctly Japanese aesthetic. Visually, these paintings were distinguished by having a relatively flat perspective and were composed with paint made from mineral-based pigments mixed with natural glues that create a matte effect on Japanese wash paper or silk canvas. Nakano is producing only a few paintings a year. He spent the time perfecting each line and capturing the light and life of the subject matter. As a dedicated Nihonga artist, he begins by hand mixing powdered mineral pigments with a solution of natural glue made from deer collagen dissolved in water. Many of his paintings, such as Radiance, Blessed with Light, the recent piece, feature flat, boldly colored plants and animals against a gold or silver background. now you're seeing that piece, the most recent work. This technique evokes the Rinpa school, a style that originated in the mid-17th century and is most famously associated with the painter and designer Ogata Korin. Ippodo Gallery, Tokyo and New York have been exhibiting his exhibition since 2019. And this second solo show in New York, we are presenting the series of white wisterias and peacocks. Following illuminating all over the world, a painting that had brought hope last summer, this spring Nakano added a pair of 2-panel screens titled Blessed with Light, with beautiful wisteria blossoms that seem to flow down from the sky, the elegant peacocks, the plants and insects of summer. Each element possesses a vitality that makes them seem alive. The overpowering composition, the exhaustive lines, the faithful details, and the living colors gives us a feeling akin to being bathed in sunlight. So we are very happy to welcome him tonight. And before today's another special, wonderful friend and guest, Dr. Frank Feltens. He initially joined the Freer-Sackler Gallery, the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art, as an Anne van Biema Fellow in Japanese Art, and became Japan Foundation Assistant Curator of Japanese Art in 2017. Feltens is a specialist in Japanese art with a focus on the late medieval and early modern periods. Additional interests include Japanese photography and the intersections between painting and ceramics. Felten has published and lectured on a range of topics related to Japanese art. Prior to coming to the Freer and Sackler, the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art, he worked at the Museum of Modern Art, the National Museum of Asian Art in Berlin, and the Nezu Museum and the Temple Sensoji in Tokyo. Feltens is a long-time practitioner of the Japanese tea ceremony, and his new book, Ogata Korin, Art in Early Modern Japan, will appear with Yale University Press this fall. So actually, Frank came to see the exhibition at our gallery in 2019, and he saw Daisuke Nakano and his wife Kumiko in actually 2 years ago from now. And we shared an unforgettable time together, and I am very thrilled that in this talk, they now see each other again. And I am very happy to hear their conversations tonight. So let's welcome, so Daisuke and Frank. And before doing so, I would love to introduce our dear member, Harry Shilly. He is going to help us as a translator. Hi, Harry.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, now it worked. Great. That was a little bit of a glitch.
Wonderful. So hi, how are you?
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you for this lovely introduction. And thank you everybody for joining us tonight. And it's good to see you, Nakano-san. お久しぶりです。
お久しぶりです。今日はありがとうございます。
はい。
ありがとうございます。
Yeah, so before I start asking Nakano-san a ton of questions, I want to share a little bit of a reminiscence about the first time that we met in 2019. And that was during Asia Week. And it was quite cold outside. And so I remember we were at the JASA reception at the Ukrainian Institute. And JADA, sorry, JADA, not JASA. And Shoko-san came up to me and said, well, I want to show you something, but you know, I'll come back and tell you exactly what. So she ran off and then eventually came back and whisked me and a few other people away and took us to her gallery. And we were going up the elevator and then entering the gallery after walking along a long corridor. And it was like when we were stepping into the gallery, it felt like a little bit like Alice in Wonderland, as if I was stepping into a different world, because the first thing we saw were Nakano-san's artworks, which I had not seen before. And it was really a mesmerizing experience in the middle of the night to be taken into this wonderful parallel universe that Shoko-san had created in her gallery. And I will never forget that night. And so this was a really wonderful experience. And it ended with a great Mexican meal and margaritas that we all had together, which was lovely as well.
Yeah, that could happen because it was in New York, you know, the whole cultural mixed Mexican dinner talking about Rinpa, that was only possible in New York. And Frank, thank you for sharing. So Daisuke, he just shared with us about his first impression on your work. And that was 忘れられない時間でしたということで思い出してくださってます。
ありがとうございます。
So today I see many friends from actually joining this time from Japan. So Frank, would you like to start the conversations?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. And I see on my screen that there are so many specialists, so I don't think I really need to introduce what Rinpa actually is, but I thought, you know, it might be nice for us to start off to think what, you know, what the, in just 3 minutes, just as quickly as we can go through the history of Japanese art, as it were, and think about what this term Rinpa actually means when we think about it in relation to Nakano-san's work. And I apologize in advance, the only 3 works that I selected here in our museum's collection, simply because I had those images on my computer, so I thought I could use them most easily. Of course, in other museums, such as here in New York, there are many more fantastic works by Rinpa artists. But a long story short, I mean, the word Rinpa really is means the school of Rin, and the Rin comes from the name Ogata Korin, as Shoko-san has already mentioned his name. But the true route of this movement, this loosely associated connection of artists, really started with this painter Tawara Yasotatsu, of whom you see the right side of a pair of screens, named Matsushima. And so this is one of his large format works that really encapsulates what Rinpa at the early stages in the early 17th century was about these flat, relatively flat forms, gorgeous applications of gold and mineral pigments like azurite, malachite, and this emphatic interplay between abstraction and representation, this constant sort of push and pull between these two seemingly contradictory elements. And this is what makes Rinpa to me very appealing. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, and this is a smaller work, a fan by the painter Ogata Korin, which is very close to my heart because I've worked on him for a very long time, and I love his work and his incredibly interesting life. And because he ended up being such an important and famous painter in so many ways during the Edo period, far outshining the name Sotatsu. Eventually, this term Rinpa, which is really a new 20th century term for the movement, was associated with him more than anything. And this is just a small work that shows you how the tradition developed. And the funny thing and very interesting thing actually about Rinpa is that these painters most often did not know each other or apprenticed with each other. So this is, you could be a Rinpa painter by choice, not by destiny. as much. You know, for the Kano school or the Tosa, these hereditary ateliers, you were born or adopted into these ateliers and apprenticed for since early childhood, which was not true for the Rinpa artists. So in that sense, Nakano-san is perfect in this kind of genealogy, because you could, if you chose to be a Rinpa artist, you could be it. It was an individual choice rather than something imposed upon you. Can we go to the last slide, please, just to wrap this up? And I think when looking at Nakano-san's work, I see most of this Edo Rinpa movement in them, rather than more than any other painters, perhaps. And Kiitsu here is a wonderful example of the 19th century and the ways this tradition was carried on all throughout the Edo period and into the cusp of the modern age. And you can already see in this mid-19th century work that there is a stronger notion, a stronger tendency of naturalism, but still with these emphatically playful games of abstraction, as you can see in this dripping in technique that is used for the leaves, which is something that Nakano-san I know uses also, and I want to ask him a bit about that as well. Yes, this is the world of Rinpa in a nutshell, and I hope I didn't leave anything significant out, and if I did, our audience will probably chime in and correct me if that is the case.
そう、中野先生、彼は今いくつかの彼の専門であるリンパを取り上げて、その共通性だったりとかまた違う視点っていうもので話の材料にと思って紹介をしてくださってますけれども、はい、どうですか、中野先生にとってやっぱりその過去の作品ですとかそういう、歴史的な伝統というものっていうものはやっぱり自分にとってどのように生きているものなのか、あるいは活用されているのか、あるいは全くそこは別の問題なのか、その辺をちょっと聞こうかなと、私がちょっとごめんなさい、突然飛び入りなんですが、Harry, can you help for our audience?
Yes. Yes. So if I heard your question correctly, Shoko-san is asking about the origins of his work and how these earlier works sort of relate to your contemporary work. Did I catch that correctly? Okay. どうぞ。すみません。ご答えをお願いします。
はい。でもやっぱり確かに日本画をね勉強する上においてやっぱり伝統とか古典であるとか過去の特に江戸時代の絵画などは僕はとても参考にしていて、やっぱりインスピレーションの根底というか根本にあるのはやっぱり古典の作品が多いですね。でやっぱり日本画独特の線であるとか、あと何も描かれていない空間余白の部分であるとかの撮り方はやっぱりちょっと諸外国の絵画とか平面表現とはちょっとまた違った独特なものがあると思うので、やっぱりそういう日本画ならではの部分を今日にも生かしていきたいっていうような感じで、だからインスピレーションは古典から受けますけど、やっぱり現代人として今というか今日性を自分なりにこう入れていけるようなことをいつもイメージしております。
Excuse me. So to give a shorter version, tradition is indeed a deeply important part of Nakano-san's tradition and past, and particularly the idea of drawing the line through different artists and different traditions that are his inspiration. But also as a contemporary artist, he sees himself as an extension of that, but also in his own field and his own position, his own work, presenting his own expressions and inspirations.
So in so many ways, your work sort of fuses the past with the present in such an elegant and delicate way. And I'm interested, I want to push the point of the Rinpa connection just simply because I'm very interested in that myself, obviously. And I would like to hear, what kind of Rinpa artist you you study and how you access those references as you are roaming through the history of Japanese art and finding references there.
はい、やっぱり先生の作品を見ると時代的なものと現代的なものをそういろんなスタイルを目指していることが見えますが、特にリンパの世界では影響を受けられている作家というのは誰でしょうか。そしてその作家の作品はどのふうに見られるかなと思っていたんですが、ちょっとご感想をお願いします。
割と日本画の部分で大切なのは割と平面的な処理をすることがやっぱり重要な部分で、結構複雑な形をしている、例えば花であるとか鳥であるとかもある程度細かくはするんですけど、やっぱり一番重要なのは省略する、単純化するということが結構見ていて一番勉強になる部分かもしれないし、やっぱり特徴だなと思いますけど。
So I'm sorry if I understood correctly, it's the idea of looking at these births and of how this idea of birth and out of understanding the points of drawing out what the essence of the natural depictions that are being the focus of the image. Is that more or less along the correct lines?
You also got the inspiration that especially for the very flat work.
Yes.
So the simplifying and then making into the lines, it actually to me it's almost like a process of the design, but he emphasized that this Rimpa's work was especially interesting on this simplifying the lines and making into the flat. That's what he emphasize.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes. I mean, this flatness is also one of the appeals that I like very much about the Rimpa tradition, for sure. But I want to, if you could name a few artists that you are particularly drawn to in that tradition, and also let us know how you study them. How do you look at books? Do you go to museums? Do you talk to scholars? How do you access the material that you then digest into your art?
はい、私にとってそのリンパの平面さがちょっと偉いな特徴と思いますが、特に画家の前に研究されている時に特に一番好きなとか興味持っているリンパの作家は誰でしょうとか、その作家の個人的な作家の作品はどのふうに研究するとか見られるとかについてお願いします。
はい。リンパの中で全ての人が好きなんですけど、やっぱり一番スタートの俵屋宗達という方がやっぱり一番僕はショックを受けたような作家で、特に僕が住んでいる京都のお寺に俵屋宗達の作品を見れるお寺があるんですけども、やっぱり絵を描き始めた時とかもことがあるたびにそこに通って作品を見たりして影響を受けておりました。でもやっぱり
So up to that point, so obviously obviously Nako-san likes all the great Rimpa artists, particularly Tawaraya Sotatsu, who was the first of the Rimpa artists that Frank discussed in his earlier presentation. Is a particular influence on Nakano-san's works, and apparently there is a temple in Kyoto where it's fairly easy to access and see his works in person. すみません、ちょっとどちらのお寺ですか？
陽源院というところです。
陽源院 apparently a temple called 陽源院 in Kyoto. So next time you're in Kyoto, I'm sure it's おすすめでしょうか。はい。で、ちょっと以前の答えをおすすめを。
それでFrank wanted to know that Daisuke sensei その作品をじゃあ実際にご覧になるというときに、実際例えば本を見たり、実際もちろん見たり、どういうふうにその材料だったり技術だったりっていうものの勉強をどこまでその深くアクセスできるのかっていうのがフランクの興味みたいなんですね。
まあ、特にその宗達の、絵の現物を見に行った時とかは、やっぱり時代を経てちょっとこう絵の具がすれて取れていたり、要するにこう手前の色の奥の色が覗けてたりするんですね。そういうのはやっぱり実際に見てるといわゆる書き順というか書いていく手順みたいなものがなんとなく想像されたりして、まあそれが答えがあるわけじゃないんですけど、僕は僕なりに解釈をしてちょっと自分の作品に生かしたりしているようなところがあります。
So a part of his technique when looking at an object and when looking at Soto's work to draw this inspiration is looking at how Sotatsu prepared and physically painted his works, how he built up the layers and what layers of paint are on top, what layers below to create these contrasting levels.
That's very interesting, and I like. I'm a big fan of Yogeni myself, and I've been there multiple times, and it's always very interesting because you go there and pay admission, and then there are these two elder ladies who take care of the temple and will do a tour with a cassette recorder for you, which is very charming and wonderfully old school. I hope they will never stop doing that. Just coming back to Nakano-san's works, and I would be interested to hear more about, and I'm sure everybody is as well, to hear about the materials that you are using. And I'm also interested in your personal story. You know, what is your background? How did you arrive at this style? What did you study? Did you study this in art school and then translated that into your works, or are you an author? Did you all study this by yourself? For example, I'm interested in, long story short, in your personal story. How did you arrive at this particular style that you have?
少し分けると、まず私もフェルテン先生もヨーギンが大好きで、特にいらっしゃっているおばあさんたちがツアーしてくださって面白かったです。そして自分の作家についてちょっとその素材について感想をくださいませんか？そしてそれが終わったら次の質問伝えていいんですかでしょうか、フェルテン先生。はい、ではお願いします。
最近で言うと今回のニューヨークの個展の作品とかもそうなんですけど、金箔とか銀箔をバックグラウンドにしてる絵を最近はずっと研究してるんですけども、やっぱりそういう金箔っていう金属質の上に絵の具を乗せて描いていくというのはなかなかこうちょっと素材の扱いが慎重になる部分があるんですけども、やっぱりそれはもうとにかくなんでしょうね、枚数を重ねて描いていけば描いていくほどまたちょっと新たな発見もあったりしながらっていうような感じで、はい、日本画の素材のまだまだちょっとこう可能性のあるようなところも探求しながら研究しているような感じです。
はい、So recently, as we can see in his excellent works, he's been experimenting a lot with gold and silver leaf, particularly for the backgrounds. And he's in general throughout his work and his research, Nakano Sensei is trying to see how he can push the boundaries of what kinds of images can be created through the traditional materials of Nihonga, that is mineral-based pigments and natural deer-based glue, animal deer-based glue.
Now you are seeing that the images from his studio, and this is the draft sketch before he walks on the silver leaves. You can see this meticulous sketch. The lines are like a born of the painting here. you can take a careful look here. And then whenever we visit his studio, the most inspiring thing first is that the tons of beautiful glass bottles of the minerals all over in his studio. And that is such soothing and then calming color palettes just bring us lights. And but the thing is that he really almost an alchemist to manipulate those colors with glue from deers, and this is so complicated. And he even explained underneath of the white petals, now you see the magnolias, thick petals, but even on there is some piece behind me that has also the white petals of the wisterias. He repeats the numerous layers of colors on the back of the white. And for example, in order to achieve the vivid greens, he often uses red oxide iron underneath the green to make a contrast. Or so what you see now is the surface, but behind there are numerous layers and depth of the work. So even this is a flat and looks like a very two-dimensional work. Somehow his work jumps on the viewers, and that can be three-dimensional in a way. So years ago, I wrote about his work. Like it really brings some kind of a contemporary feeling of even animation, that the detail really win the dynamics. So that's what I would like to really emphasize from his work. If I should describe his work, yes, he's very traditional, but at the same time, very contemporary, almost like animation, anime involved 3D aspect at the same time. That's through his intensive work and techniques, I should say. Thank you. And Frank, how did you think about this materials in this contemporary world? People are now using photography and easy sketches with the computer and stuff. Still, he works with the very traditional materials. How do you perceive about it?
Yes, I'm a traditionalist in a lot of ways, and that is one of them. And I really have the greatest respect for any artist like Nakano-san who knows their materials thoroughly, who has done a lot of research into the various materials, but also knows how to use them quite masterfully. And so in that sense, I mean, I was just struck by the vibrancy of the artworks when I visited your gallery 2 years ago. And it is in so many ways. I mean, Nakano-san has spoken about the decay of artworks in the case of Yogenin, you know, that he sees the Rinpa painters not as these artists made their works originally. So looking at Nakano-san's work, you know, you see sort of the 21st century reincarnation of Rinpa. So I'm trying to imagine in my mind what these paintings will look like in 100 years time or in 200 years time. And so that is what you do as a curator. So, and I'm sure they will stand the test of time, which just simply because of their mastery of materials and also of representation.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful way to say. And then Frank, I would like you to also discuss about as a curator, if you can put his work together, what kind of a theme or world you would like to play with? if I may ask?
Sure. I mean, what I found so compelling, and I think that is actually not just my own understanding of Nakano-san's work, but that he is focusing on not the main seasons that you find spring and autumn, which are so often depicted in Japanese art, much more than winter and summer. So in that sense, I mean, Nakano-san seems to be focusing on the underdog of the seasons in so many ways, which I find very appealing myself, because summer and especially winter deserve much more poetry and much more paintings altogether, because they're beautiful seasons in and of themselves. So focusing on that, for example, on that aspect would be something that I would find appealing, and as a quick idea for an exhibition, perhaps.
That's wonderful, because 中野先生、フランクが今もし自分があなたの作品を学芸員として、何かキュレーションするとすれば、やはり中野先生の絵はいわゆる日本画に多い春と秋を取り上げたテーマに限らず、今回の夏だったりとか、冬だったりとか、むしろすごくポエティックな、フランクが言うにはポエティック、詩的な世界観での表現がやっぱり多くて、どうしてとりわけそういう春とか秋ではない季節にも自分のその主体を持っていくのかっていうようなところも私聞きたいなと思ってたところなんですけども、Harry, can you help?
Yeah, so just to translate the question, why Nakano-sensei do you so frequently focus on summer and winter themes, which as opposed to the more common themes in Japanese art history of spring and fall? 答えをお願いします。
春も秋ももちろん絵には描くんですけども、やっぱりおっしゃられる通り夏の絵であるとか冬の雪の絵であるとかは割とかつてもちょっと前例が少ないと思うんですね、春とか秋に比べて。だからその前例が少ないことにあえてチャレンジするのはやりがいがある部分でもありますし、植物の絵に移る前に僕はずっと動物の作品をちょっと続けて描いていってたことがあって、やっぱり夏とかの植物であるとか、やっぱり生き生きとした生命力が強いような季節の植物とかはやっぱりちょっとモチーフとして扱うには割とチャレンジが必要というか、なんか扱ってて新しい発見もあって面白いところであります。
So before while Harry is processing, I would like to show you that his old style paintings focused on animals. In 2010 or 11, he has been working on the animals as his important subjects. Let me see. Chu, can you show us the animals, his past works?
And perhaps while we're looking at those, should I translate?
Yes, so Harry, can you do that while we are showing his animals?
Yes, so he obviously Nakano-sensei also does occasionally paint autumn and spring and themes, but he saw this idea of painting these less covered seasons of spring, of summer and winter as a challenge, and particularly when he switched from animals to focusing on plants as a subject for representation, he thought that summer, which was at this time when plants are really at full power and have this overwhelming energy and abundance, that he wanted to focus on in his works.
And while we have a second, I want to ask another question. And how do you study your subjects? How do you go out into nature and observe the flowers or the trees or the horses in this case, or how do you come up with these subjects, and how do you bring them into the paintings?
描く前にそのテーマをどの風に研究するとか勉強するとかしますか？自然なところ行ったし、行ったし、お願いします。
やっぱりまあそうですね、日常その植物とかを触れてその作品にこうしたく感じる時も多いんですけども、どちらかといったらこう構成が先に浮かんでいて、そこにどういうような植物が当てはまるかっていうような発想の時も多いですし、やっぱり古典を影響は受けるんですけども、やっぱり同じことをしていてはいけないので、やっぱり自分なりに現代人として見た時にどのような絵を生み出せるかっていうことはよく考えております。
So he obviously begins by he begins by he begins obviously by looking at the base form and think about how he will then go and construct works, and he thinks about if I understood correctly, about how these kinds of subjects have been represented in historical paintings and expressions, and how he as a contemporary artist wants to transform them into his own contemporary works.
それと中野先生、この前本でお話しくださったみたいに、その動物をスケッチするっていうのはやっぱり止まってる植物をスケッチするのと全く違うっていうお話があって、
そうですね、
90何%はほとんどもうつかめない、ほとんど見てるだけで、あとの何%しかもうスケッチに現れないっていう話をくださったんですけども、
はい、
そのあたりのちょっと経験談とかも
そうですね、はい、やっぱりその動物は動きますので、やっぱり本当にもう見てるような時間がほとんどになって、手を動かす時間ってやっぱりわずかになって、でもこう日にちを重ねていくうちにやっぱりこうインプットされていくんでしょうかね。ずっと手がスムーズに動くようになるんですけども、だからやっぱりこうずっと見てるので、1枚の横向きのスケッチを1枚撮るだけで、割とこうもう どの角度から見ても割と描き出せるような感じでこう自分の中にインプットできるようなところがあってっていうことはありますね、動物を描く面白さっていう。
He just tried to explain that it's so different between sketching the plants and flowers, which is stable, and the animals who never stops. It's completely different experience when he tried to make a drawings and sketching. And he said, if you really find a one definite sketch, which means you have to know 360 degrees of all the animal as a subject. So what he has been working is just gazing and gazing. All like a 99% is his gazing and really capturing, and the 1% is just achieved as a one sheet of paper. But which means when he could finish a sheet of paper as a sketch, which means he in his brain 360 should be input in his brain. So that experience really trained him to see the subject and capture the lines and even this movements and even heartbeat inside. That shows to me, many Nihonga can be very static senses stop, but his Nihonga is very active, you know, even two-dimensional work, but I can emphasize again, very three-dimensional. So it's a very, very important part, I think, that he studied from animal sketch before flowers. So, and then Daisuke Nakano 先生、 I would like to give you some opportunity to ask any questions to Frank. フランクさんに質問があったらぜひ。
そうですね。そうやってこう日本の文化や美術にとても強く興味を持たれて日々研究されていると思うんですけども、その研究をこう続けていけるモチベーションというのか、僕も絵を描き続けているのがたまに不思議がられますけど、研究者っていうのもとてもこう不思議だなと感じるので、そういうような点と、あとそれを続けておられると、またこう今日でもこう新たな発見とか、何かこうちょっとした発見というかヒントみたいなものとかが日々見つかったりしてるもんなんでしょうか。
So, as a researcher who's working on Japanese art, which is such a broad category, what is your general motivation to continue and to process and to work down that line of study and further, as you're working every day, are there any particular revelations or discoveries that you've come across that you could share with us?
Sure. I mean, there is an easy and a difficult answer for both of these questions, and I'm going to volunteer the easy one. My motivation is really to work with beautiful things. I mean, as simple as that. I mean, it's this is a job, or of course, as you mentioned, Nakano-san, there is always points when one starts, when some days are not as enthusiastic as others. But in general, I mean, to have the privilege to work with wonderful things is really a blessing. And I consider myself lucky every day. And about the second question, yes, there is always new discoveries to be made. And I'm noticing that here in my work at the Freer and Sackler. I mean, just a collection that's been around for close to 100 years now, and growing, of course. So new editions always provide interesting points for new discoveries, but also works that are longer in the collections, for example, that have been sleeping in storage for decades, if not more. And it's wonderful to be looking into those aspects of the job. And unfortunately, we can't do this right now, but I can't wait to be back.
はい、難しい答えも簡単も深いもあるんですが、簡単っていうと、なぜそういうことを研究、私のフランクさんのモチベーションというと、綺麗なものと働く研究することは、本当に特別なものですね。で、そういうことが出てきて、本当にうるそうな答えがあってて、そして発見というと毎日が発見があるんでしょうね。例えばフェルテン先生はもちろんフリア桜ガラリーで働いているんですね。100年古いのコレクションですけど、毎日新しい部分まだ研究されていないことが見つかっているんですね。見つかっているからというと、まだ発見しているというわけないんですから、新しい研究の道が現れる、生活ですね。
ありがとうございます。
中野先生もこう書いている中で、こうどうして飽きずにというか、ただただこう毎日同じことを思ってこう取り組んでいくっていうか、なんて言ってるのかな、resilient and persistent work, every one brush stroke by brush stroke, it really means a lot. How do you keep your spirit or energy every single day? Can I ask that?
先生は自分のモチベーションはどのふうに毎日を自分としては応援しますか？自分としては進めますか？
やっぱり日本画の材料 素材自体がやっぱりとても美しいものなので、さっきも画像に出てましたけども、そのナチュラルなピグメントっていうのはとても美しいから、扱っているだけでこうやっぱり気持ちが癒されていることと、やっぱりまあすごく長い時間をかけて一枚の絵を描くことも多いですけども、やっぱりまあ何よりもやっぱその作品を完成できることをやっぱり僕が一番こう楽しみにしているところもありますし、やっぱりそういう自然を対象に植物であるとか動物であるっていうものをモチーフにしているところがやっぱり、書き込んでいってどんどんこう絵の中で生き生きしていくことがやっぱり日々僕自身がとても楽しいことなんですね。だから多分、はい、まあ疲れるのは疲れるんですけども、嫌に思ったことはないですね。はい。
So let's go there. So working with Japanese materials and looking at these works and how they're constructed and working with these pigments is really just such a beautiful work and project that Nakano Sensei is expressing that he really finds very fascinating. And when you think beyond the materiality, about thinking about the possibilities of how he can create new kinds of paintings is really something that he really enjoys and something that he finds quite fun. Additionally, when we think about his subject of plants and animals and things that are really just living and bursting with life, there's this enjoyment in trying to capture them and represent them and thinking about how they can appear next. That is, I think he's what he's saying is at the heart of his interest and motivation.
Yeah, Frank, especially you're in Washington D.C. and you are waiting for the magnolias first and cherry blossom next, probably stage, correct?
Yes, so looking, I don't know if the work behind you is magnolias as well. I can't tell, but I think it might actually be, right? But I remember, oh yes, possibly. My eyesight is not as good.
And wisterias next to each other.
All right, lovely. Yes. So when I was seeing the slideshow, I remembered the magnolia screens by Nakano-san, which I remember seeing in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, we also have magnolias blossoming right now. So I went to see them yesterday, and it reminded me of the screens, which was a lovely connection.
Yes, I want to explain that how much nature saved me in this grim time of this COVID thing. First of all, we cannot go out, or even if we take subway or those commutes, we cannot really interact with human, and we somehow lost the humanity. And that time, every single blossoms or even little patient bud puts smile on my face. Or I recently, it's been 4 years, but I'm studying photography. In fact, my special teacher, Douglas, is on the audience, but thank you. This once I bring the camera with me and just jump into the Central Park in Concrete Jungle, New York City, we can still have this just fantastic energy and nature. And even in the city, I can still experience this nature. And then strangely enough, that the squirrels and chipmunks and the little ones come out actually while the people are locked down. And I could tell that how much nature bring us every single day some kind of a force or fun or surprise. And then I want to tell that the Daisuke has been doing this continuous and persistent work. I'm sure he is the one who got energy from his brushstroke, from his subject, right? And I would love you to come visit Ippodo Gallery, New York. Hopefully the vaccination come along soon and take some few more months, I think. But we, the gallery, want to bring Untitled of the beauty to save the life, and while the vaccination is getting. And since the time is running out now, it's almost 8:30 and 9:30 in Japan, I would like to show our exhibition website that if you can come to our gallery website, ippodogallery.com, the current exhibition is on our top page. And if you can take a time, there are pieces that he recently finished, including some pieces from 2019 and other paintings from his early ages. And the exhibition now here in New York is filled with energy, and if possible, Daisuke and his wife Kumiko should be here now, but I missed that. But I would like to share how much we are grateful that we could work with this beauty. The beauty is a power of life, and also you can take a little browse, for example, video. Even for the people who cannot experience in person, we try to get some video that you can just sneak peek check in here. And there are, you can experience some kind of textures or the surface energy. But again, if you really want to experience, you want to come to the gallery. And I hope, Frank, can you make it to the show in New York?
If I get vaccinated in time, I'll be on a train and come up. I promise.
I like that. And how about Harry?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. And then Daisuke, we are now excited to announce that this exhibition is traveling to Portland Japanese Garden in coming June towards July, in the very same season of the wisterias in the garden. So we are making effort for welcome all the people there. So Daisuke, we are going to see each other in Portland. Daisuke sensei, are you okay? Are you little sad that you cannot be here in New York? Or 日本にいてニューヨークにいらっしゃれないのは寂しくないですかって言って。
いや、とても寂しいです。本当に。もう2年前ね、初めてさせてもらったのが懐かしい感じで、本当はもう今すぐ飛んでいきたいぐらいですけど。でもまあ6月のね、おっしゃられるそのポートランドでの展示の方の時には、ね、アメリカの方に渡れる、安心して渡れるような状況になってたら、とても嬉しいと思います。
Nako Sensei is expressing his disappointment that he can't be here in person as he was 2 years ago, but is hopeful that at for the second installation of the exhibition in the Portland Japanese Museum, he will be able to be there, God willing.
Thank you. So we would like to conclude this conversation. We would love to continue, but this is time issue. So Frank and Daisuke, thank you so very much for sharing your conversations with us.
ありがとう、フランク。ね、時間合わせてくださってありがとうございます。
いえいえ、こちらこそありがとうございました。じゃあ、
また安心してニューヨークに行ける日が来ることを心待ちにしています。
こちらこそ、はい。
So thank you, and Harry, thank you so much for your help.
Thank you.
And then thank you for all the audiences from all over. I feel so warm in this little rainy early spring night in New York. I miss all of you. And again, without your support, we are not here today. So thank you so very much. And we are looking forward to share more surprises and more beauties in this year. So we would like to close, but see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.